It is my pleasure now to introduce Leslie Chapman Henderson. She's the President and CEO of the Federal Alliance for Safe Homes, also known as FLASH. FLASH is an award-winning national nonprofit corporation founded in 1998 by a collaborative of organizations dedicated to the strengthening of homes and safeguarding families from disaster. Today, FLASH is the fastest growing disaster safety education organization in the United States. I would like to give the floor to Leslie Chapman Henderson.
Thank you, Dean Gashot, Ambassador Momen, and fellow panelists. It's delightful to be here, and I think I'm glad I'm last because I think my remarks will help pull together like a culture of prevention that we're trying to propel, tries to pull together all the science and insights on design and planning and all the goodwill that comes together in this room. As you can imagine, it only really takes one event like a Hurricane Andrew, a Hurricane Katrina, or a Superstorm Sandy to get people thinking and collaborating about how to do things better. But the challenge is it typically happens in that one community. For our part, our organization came together as a volunteer committee after Hurricane Andrew just that way. We were asking ourselves, how can we build differently? How can we position buildings in different places to afford people safety and to help the community bounce back? As I was getting ready to come here today, I was so gratified to see these words in the UN Habitat Strategic Plan that said, building a culture of prevention at all levels of society is a challenge often not met until after the devastation wrought by disaster. I wasn't gratified because they acknowledged that it happens after the fact, but I was acknowledged that we all know we need to do better to put that prevention in place ahead of time. Our panel today says to build or not to build. For my part, I'm a pragmatist, and I say we build. We're going to build. But I join you with a very important caveat that the Dean opened with, and that is when we build, we must do so in a way that recognizes the value of resilience and survivability. So let's look at South Florida, where we had our beginnings, where we've seen explosive growth in the 20 years since Hurricane Andrew. The growth is frankly quite staggering, and we saw pictures of what sea level rise is expected to do there. The insurance exposures alone in each of the 3 Southeast Florida counties individually top $176 billion. So our concern is like yours. Will those buildings withstand high wind, wind-driven rain, and rising water the way that they are supposed to when the next hurricane comes? I think that hurricane, hopefully not this weekend, will answer that question. So my focus and what I want to put in front of the group for the discussion are 3 points that I think drive this culture of prevention. One is the question of policy leadership. We heard it here discussed as political will. The second is creating public value, and the other is using an open source information framework to advance the cause. Now, we have opportunities to advance resilience at every level of government. One of the new ways that we've been able to work on is some new proposed federal legislation that creates tax-free disaster savings accounts. The 2013 Disaster Savings Account Act proposes to make individuals eligible for tax breaks on mitigation expenses. So this drives resilience on an individual basis if you want to, say, install a cripple wall in a seismic community, install hurricane shutters, or maybe you need wildfire-resistant roofing. It's also important to not add tax disincentives. So it's been important in our work to illustrate places where if individuals strengthen their homes, or business owners do, that they do not enjoy additional property taxes as a result of doing the right thing. We're gaining a lot of ground on policy matters throughout this country and I think globally to advance resilience, but we also can simultaneously lose ground at the local levels. We're currently involved in a case in Memphis, Tennessee that frankly is so counterintuitive that it presents a great conundrum. Memphis sits in the heart of the New Madrid seismic zone with a self-described aging infrastructure and out-of-date building codes. Yet local leaders have been very slow and in some cases unwilling to adopt current model codes, specifically those that address seismic safety. Compounding this picture, because it's not just a local issue, is the fact that 30% of all U.S. goods are processed through Memphis each and every year. FedEx would be part of that reason, and a huge transportation trucking hub is the other. So the question I put out before we begin our discussion is, what can we do to help the local official in Memphis or in any city across the world understand that their decisions, because of our interdependent economy, are impactful on resilience for everyone? One answer, as I said before, is to create public value. We want to create a belief system where people will only live, work, or play in buildings that are safe, strong, and sustainable. Again, as we looked at the recommendations by UN Habitat, we couldn't agree more. When you say that mitigation requires the involvement of all parts of society, and public awareness is crucial to create behavior change, especially with children, who are clearly our future decision makers. Imagine that in Memphis we wouldn't have these problems if we had raised a generation of children who understand resilience and value resilience as well. For our part, we've partnered with the world's leading storytellers at Walt Disney World to drive this change. There we've created an award-winning edutainment experience called Stormstruck, A Tale of Two Homes. Stormstruck is a 2,700 square foot weather mitigation exhibit that we designed in collaboration with the Disney Imagineers. As a benefit of you being in the audience today, I'd like to invite you all to be my guests there. It's certainly a lot of fun to come to Stormstruck, but more importantly, since 2008, we've educated millions on these 2 points. One, you can ensure resilience if you ask the right questions, make the right choices, and take the right actions. We constantly survey our guests at Stormstruck to ask them if they understand the message and the case for resilience. And what they tell us is very clear again and again. Firstly, they're very dismayed to understand that buildings are not automatically built with disaster resilience in mind. But secondly, they're very happy to learn that with the help of experts like the group that we have here in this room today, that those buildings can be. Right now we're partnering with Carnegie Mellon and UC Irvine and 2 of the nation's leading social psychologists to look at Stormstruck and this model of empowerment, distill those findings on risk, communication, and decision making, and see if we can come up with replicable models that can be used in all public awareness programs moving forward. The last piece that I want to put on the table to consider as we talk about how to drive resilience is the notion of opening up the information. We need to use an open source framework, and we use a definition that goes beyond the traditional software to one that clearly just means sharing, collaborating, transparency. I think you may have seen the Open Source Information Network come to life in the textbook industry, where Dr. Richard Baranek is successfully providing more than 2 million textbooks per month to students throughout the globe. Young students in Pakistan now have access to self-paced trigonometry courses, and people are learning things that, because of the cost of textbooks and inaccessibility, they couldn't previously do. I think it's clear that all of our work can benefit from open sourcing, our work included. For our part, we've created a website called mitigationmovement.org. It is an open source website. We just came out of beta. I'd like to invite you to go there to both share, post, and download information that can help advance resilience in whatever shape it takes and you need for your community. We have academic papers, consumer education campaigns, recovery opportunities, stories of best practices, and more. So inclusion, I think, and I hope you'll agree that these 3 things, these 3 areas, while less specific than the design, science, and engineering that we need to make our buildings safer, the 3 things of policy leadership, public value, and a culture of prevention that includes a transparent information framework will help drive all those things into practice where we need them when the next Superstorm Sandy or worse comes along. Thank you.
Thank you for that most thought-provoking talk.